Verstappen hits the headlines as he acquires his GT3 license. Ferrari has been accused of serious internal issues, and all the news in F1 right now is revealed. Do consider subbing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. Our first story comes from Planet F1, and the headline is fascinating. Max Verstappen set for Nürburgring race attendance in another non-F1 outing. Now, on the surface, this seems simple. The three-time world champion, in the middle of a grueling 24-race season, is choosing to spend his precious free weekend going to another race. But not just any race. He's driving a historic BMW touring car at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. This isn't a PR stunt. This is pure, unadulterated passion. And I would argue that this, right here, is the secret sauce to Verstappen's incredible success. Let's break this down. Most elite athletes in a sport, as demanding as Formula One, treat their time off as sacred recovery time. It's hyperbaric chambers, simulator sessions, media commitments, and intense physical training. The idea of hopping into a different, arguably more dangerous car on the most treacherous track in the world for fun would give most team principals a heart attack. Christian Horner probably gets a notification every time Max even looks at a steering wheel on his days off. But for Verstappen, this isn't a distraction. It's a reset. It's a reminder of why he fell in love with racing in the first place. Formula One, for all its glory, is a pressure cooker. Its politics, radio messages, tire management, media scrutiny, and relentless perfectionism. The joy of simply driving can sometimes get lost in the mix. By going to the Nürburgring, Verstappen is stripping the sport back to its bare essentials: a driver, a machine, and a legendary track. There are no complex energy recovery systems to manage. No strategic tire offsets to calculate against a rival. It's just raw, mechanical racing. This harkens back to a different era. Drivers like James Hunt, Niki Lauda, and even a modern parallel like Fernando Alonso have always sought out other racing disciplines. Alonso tried the Indy 500, Le Mans, and Dakar. This cross-pollination does something incredible for a driver's skill set. The Nordschleife is a 12.9-mile beast with over 150 corners, changing elevations, and famously fickle weather. Mastering it, even in a slower car, requires a level of concentration and adaptability that is frankly unmatched. The feedback it gives a driver is immense. It's the ultimate practice in car control and reading a track. For Verstappen, who is often criticized, sometimes fairly, for his blunt demeanor and seeming lack of interest in the politics of F1, this is his authentic self. He doesn't see himself as just an F1 driver. He sees himself as a racer. The car is almost irrelevant. The platform is almost irrelevant. If it has 4 wheels and a engine, he wants to compete in it. This mentality is what makes him so fearsome on Sunday. While other drivers might be overthinking the data, Verstappen's approach is often instinctual, built on a foundation of thousands of racing miles that have nothing to do with Formula One. There's also a powerful psychological element at play. In Formula One, he is Max Verstappen, the triple world champion. Every move is watched. Every word is analyzed. At the Nürburgring, surrounded by hobbyists and historic car enthusiasts, he can just be Max, a guy who loves cars. That anonymity and freedom are priceless for mental well-being. He can recharge by doing the very thing that would exhaust others. Finally, let's talk about the message this sends. In an era where drivers are increasingly seen as corporate entities, brand ambassadors who are polished and perfect, Verstappen's unadulterated passion is incredibly refreshing. It connects him to the core fanbase in a way that 100 sponsored social media posts never could. We see him and think, that's what I would do if I had his talent and resources. He is living the dream, not just the job. So, while some might see a potential risk, I see a calculated and brilliant method of staying sharp, staying hungry, and most importantly, staying in love with the art of driving. It's not a distraction from his F1 job. It's the very thing that makes him so good at it. Next up, a story that still feels surreal to say out loud. Lewis Hamilton. In Ferrari Red. The Planet F1 article focuses on his attitude at the 2025 Italian Grand Prix, suggesting he'll be a man transformed, unburdened by the struggles at Mercedes. And I think they're absolutely right. This isn't just a team change. This is a fundamental psychological reset for a 7-time champion who has, by his own admission, been battling frustration for years. To understand the magnitude of this shift, we have to look at the last 2 seasons at Mercedes. Since the ground effect era began in 2022, Lewis has been driving a car that is, at best, a diva, and at worst, fundamentally uncompetitive. We've seen the radio messages, the body language on the podium, the candid interviews. This is a driver who operates on feeling, on inspiration, and on absolute confidence in his machine. The Mercedes W13 and W14, with their vicious bouncing and unpredictable handling, shattered that confidence. He was driving not to win, but to survive, not to exploit limits, but to discover them. For an athlete of his caliber, that is a special kind of torture. He was mired in a cycle of hope and disappointment. Every winter, there was talk of a new concept, a silver arrow that would return them to the front. And every spring, the reality was a car that was firmly the 3rd or 4th fastest. That grind takes a toll. It saps motivation and breeds frustration. Now, contrast that with his current situation. He knows he's leaving. The pressure to fix the Mercedes is no longer on his shoulders. He can drive with a certain freedom, acting as a valuable development driver for 2025, but without the crushing weight of being the sole savior of the team. But the real change will come when he puts on that red race suit. The Italian Grand Prix at Monza is the cathedral of motorsport for the Tifosi. The energy is unlike anything else. For the past decade, Lewis has been the villain there, the dominant force, in the silver car that shattered Ferrari's dreams. In 2025, he will walk out onto that balcony, not as an adversary, but as their messiah. The roar of the crowd will be for him. That kind of positive energy, that adulation, is rocket fuel for a driver like Hamilton. He is a driver who thrives on narrative, on emotion, on being part of something bigger than himself. The Mercedes story was incredible. The young Brit who dared to leave McLaren and built a dynasty. But that story has reached its conclusion. The Ferrari story is the greatest story in all of sports. It's a legacy play. It's about conquering the final frontier. No British driver has won a championship with Ferrari since Mike Hawthorne in 1958. The chance to become the man who finally brought a title back to Maranello, to etch his name alongside Fangio, Schumacher, and Lauda in a completely unique way, is the ultimate motivation. This isn't just about a change of scenery, it's about a change of purpose. At Mercedes, the goal was to maintain excellence. At Ferrari, the goal is to restore it. The latter is a far more romantic and inspiring challenge for a driver who has already won everything there is to win. The attitude shift the article talks about will be palpable. We will see a lighter, more joyful, but also a hungrier Lewis Hamilton. The fire that was dampened by porpoising and zero-pod side pods will be stoked by the passion of the Tifosi and the historic weight of the prancing horse. He's not going to Ferrari to see out his career. He's going to launch a second one. Now, for a story that comes with a side of classic Eddie Irvine bluntness. The former Ferrari driver called McLaren a customer team and stated, "They are not a proper manufacturer," reigniting a decades-old debate about the very soul of Formula One. He essentially said that teams using rival powertrains, like McLaren with Mercedes, can't be considered true constructors' champions. This is a spicy take, and to understand it, we have to go back to what his old boss, Ron Dennis, believed. Ron Dennis's McLaren was the antithesis of a customer team. He famously said that the idea of a team buying a chassis from another was abhorrent, and that it would be impossible for a customer team to win a championship. For him, F1 was the pinnacle of manufacturing. It was about designing and building every single component in-house to create a perfect, cohesive machine. The glory was in the totality of the creation. The championship was called the Constructors' Championship for a reason. It rewarded the construction of the best car. Irvine is channeling that old-school philosophy. In his view, if you're bolting a Mercedes engine into your chassis, you're not a full constructor, you're a hybrid. You're benefiting from the hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of engineering hours that Mercedes HPP has invested in their power unit without having to bear that cost yourself. It gives you a massive head start. You can focus your entire budget and resources on the chassis and aero, while a true manufacturer like Mercedes or Ferrari has to split its resources between chassis and engine departments. And you know what? From a purist's perspective, he has a point. The playing field isn't level. A customer team gets a proven championship-winning engine without the development struggle. But here's the critical counterargument. Modern Formula One is impossibly complex and prohibitively expensive. The notion of every team being a full-fat manufacturer, like in the 1,980 seconds, is a devilo fantasy. Without customer teams, the grid would shrink dramatically. Haas, Williams, Sauber, AlphaTauri, and Aston Martin all rely on customer engines. Without them, F1 would be a four-team sport. Furthermore, having a great engine doesn't guarantee a thing. Look at the Mercedes Works team itself. They have the best engine on the grid, according to many, and they've been lost in the wilderness with their chassis for 3 years. McLaren's resurgence isn't down to their Mercedes engine. It's down to a stunningly good aerodynamic concept, masterminded by Andrea Stella and his technical team. The engine is a component, but the chassis is the star. Aston Martin has the same Mercedes engine as McLaren, but is nowhere near as competitive. That proves the point that the chassis is the key differentiator. Irvine's comments are a nostalgic provocation. They remind us of a purer, perhaps more romantic era in F1. But they don't reflect the commercial and practical realities of the sport today. The compromise, the hybrid model of works teams and customer teams, is what keeps the grid healthy and competitive. McLaren's success is a testament to brilliant engineering, not to cheating. They are playing by the rules that exist, and playing them better than most. While the debate about sporting fairness will always rage, McLaren's achievements in 2023 and 2024 are absolutely valid and deserve to be celebrated as a triumph of design. This next story sounds like it's straight out of a spy novel. Adrian Newey, the most successful designer in F1 history, is reportedly under investigation by Red Bull for allegedly taking confidential information with him to his new team. The specific motive mentioned? To help investigate the motive behind McLaren's MCL39's performance. This is a layered and incredibly serious accusation. Let's unpack the legal and ethical minefield here. Firstly, confidential information is the lifeblood of an F1 team. It's protected by insanely strict contracts, non-disclosure agreements, and often gardening leave. The idea that Newey, of all people, would brazenly walk out with sensitive data stretches credulity. He's a seasoned professional who understands the legal landscape better than anyone. However, the allegation is likely more subtle. It might not be about blueprints on a USB stick, but about the knowledge in his head, the know-how. This is the eternal problem in F1 intellectual property law. You can't erase a genius's brain. Newey knows why the Red Bull RB20 has such a powerful floor. He knows the design philosophies, the trade-offs, the engineering principles that are unique to Red Bull. When he looks at the McLaren MCL39, his trained eye, shaped by decades at Red Bull, might see things others don't. He might be able to reverse engineer why McLaren's solution is so fast based on his own foundational knowledge. The question is, where does using your own expertise end and using confidential trade secrets begin? It's a very blurry line. The reported motive is fascinating. Red Bull, after years of total dominance, suddenly has a real challenger in McLaren. Their car is performing in ways that perhaps their simulations didn't predict. In the ultra-paranoid world of F1, the first reaction to being beaten is often, how did they do it so quickly? They must have stolen something. Launching an investigation, even if it ultimately finds nothing, serves multiple purposes. It acts as a deterrent to any other Red Bull employees thinking of leaving. It shows the rest of the team that management is fighting back. And it potentially sows a seed of doubt in the public's mind about the legitimacy of McLaren's performance. It's also a powerful bargaining chip. The threat of a protracted and expensive legal battle could be used to negotiate stricter terms on Newey's gardening leave or to ensure he doesn't poach key Red Bull staff. This is high-stakes corporate warfare. For McLaren, it's something they would have fully expected. Any top team hiring a rival's key employee undergoes intense legal scrutiny to ensure a clean room environment is established, isolating the new hire from projects that could create a conflict of interest. Ultimately, this investigation may never find any concrete evidence of wrongdoing. But its existence tells us two things. Red Bull is genuinely rattled by McLaren's pace, and they are pulling every lever at their disposal to protect their advantage. They're not just fighting on the track, they're fighting in the courtroom and the boardroom. The battle between genius and governance has begun. Our final story is a fantastic technical puzzle. Carlos Sainz is being linked to a seat at Williams for 2025, a seat currently occupied by Alex Albon, who has brilliantly rebuilt his career there. But the article points out a crucial challenge. Williams has built its car around Albon's specific, smooth driving style. Sainz, by contrast, is known for a more aggressive rear-end, point, and squirt technique. This isn't just a driver change. It's a potential philosophical overhaul for the entire team. Let's delve into what building a car around a driver actually means. It's not that engineers design a completely different car. It's about the subtle setup choices and design direction that cater to a driver's preferences. Alex Albon has thrived at Williams in a car that has a very stable rear end. He is exceptionally smooth with his inputs, carries great mid-corner speed, and relies on that stability to maximize the car's performance. The team has developed the car to enhance this strength, knowing that their lead driver can extract the most from a platform that behaves predictably. Enter Carlos Sainz. Sainz Sr. was known as El Toro, the Bull, for a reason, and Carlos has inherited some of that aggression. His driving style is more of a V-shape. Brake late, turn the car sharply, and get on the power early, using the throttle to rotate the car. This style prefers a more nervous, oversteer-oriented car that responds aggressively to inputs. It's the kind of style that can produce stunning qualifying laps, but can be harder on the tires over a race distance. So, the multi-million-dollar question for Williams is, do they sign the best available driver on the market in Sainz, a proven race winner, and fundamentally change their car's design philosophy to suit him? Or do they stick with the known quantity of Albon and the development path they are on? This is a huge strategic decision. Signing Sainz would be a massive statement of intent from James Vowles. It says, "We are no longer a backmarker team just happy for points. We are building to win." Sainz brings experience, speed, and development insight from Ferrari and McLaren. However, the risk is that they create a car that neither driver is fully happy with. If they try to make a compromise car that is both stable and aggressive, they might end up with a dog that neither Albon nor Sainz can drive quickly. The alternative is to double down on Albon. They know he works brilliantly with the team and can deliver consistent points. But does Albon have that ultimate, race-winning ceiling that Sainz has proven to have? It's the classic dilemma: evolution versus revolution. Do you stick with a proven, successful formula? Or do you gamble on a higher-risk, higher-reward option that forces you to reinvent your entire approach? For Sainz, the decision is equally tough. Does he go to a team where he is guaranteed to be the undisputed number one, but might have to wait years for them to build a car to his liking? Or does he hold out for a potentially better option? This story is more than just silly season gossip. It's a crystal clear example of how driver style, technical philosophy, and team ambition collide in the high-stakes game of Formula One strategy. Let's start with some classic, no-holds-barred opinion from a man who never shied away from speaking his mind: former Ferrari driver Eddie Irvine. In a recent interview with Planet F1, Irvine dropped an absolute bombshell of a take. His thesis? Ferrari should be going all out to sign Max Verstappen, and that Lewis Hamilton joined the Scuderia too old. Wow. Let's break this down because there are multiple layers to this. First, the Verstappen angle. Irvine said, and I quote, "For me, the only guy that can really do the business is Verstappen. I think they should throw everything at trying to get Verstappen out of Red Bull." On the surface, this isn't a revolutionary opinion. Max Verstappen is the most dominant driver of this era, arguably one of the most dominant of all time. Any team on the grid would sign him in a heartbeat. But the context here is everything. Verstappen is locked into a long-term contract with Red Bull until the end of 2028. He is the centerpiece of their entire project. To get him out of Red Bull would require not just an astronomical financial offer, which Ferrari could probably muster, but a complete collapse of the Red Bull environment. We've seen cracks with the departure of Adrian Newey, and Max has been vocal about his loyalty being tied to the team's performance and harmony. But would he leave for the chaos of Ferrari? It's the ultimate what-if scenario. Irvine believes Ferrari's problems are primarily with the car, not the team's infamous operational chaos, and that a driver of Verstappen's caliber is the final piece of the puzzle. It's a romantic idea, but the practicalities make it a long, long shot. Now, let's get to the more contentious part: his comments on Lewis Hamilton. Irvine stated that Hamilton is obviously a great driver, but he's also 40 years old. I think they've hired him too old. This is where the comment sections light up. On one hand, there's a cold, hard statistical reality. Very few drivers in F1. History have won championships into their 40 seconds. The reflexes, the stamina, the sheer relentless drive can diminish. Fernando Alonso is defying that logic right now. But he's an outlier, a freak of nature. But to dismiss Lewis Hamilton purely on age is to ignore everything else he brings. We're not just talking about a driver. We're talking about a 7-time world champion with over 100 race wins. He brings an immense wealth of experience, a technical understanding that is arguably second to none, and a global marketing power that instantly makes Ferrari a bigger story everywhere in the world. His move to Ferrari isn't just a sporting decision, it's a cultural and commercial earthquake. Irvine's comments come from a different era. He raced when drivers peaked earlier and retired younger. The science of fitness, nutrition, and simulator work has extended drivers' prime significantly. Lewis is not the same driver he was in 2014, but he's evolved. His racecraft, his strategic brain, his ability to manage tires, these are things that have arguably improved with age. The real question isn't if 40 is too old, but what version of Lewis Hamilton will Ferrari get in 2025? Will it be the wounded lion, desperate to prove Mercedes wrong and claim that elusive 8th title, pouring every ounce of his experience into making Ferrari winners again? Or will it be a legend on a victory lap, cashing a huge check and enjoying the romance of the red car before riding off into the sunset? My bet is heavily on the former. To write off Lewis Hamilton is a dangerous game, and I think Eddie Irvine might be underestimating the motivation of a champion who feels he has something left to prove. In essence, Irvine's comments are a fantastic debate starter. They're reductive, a little provocative, but they force us to ask important questions about driver value, age, and what a team like Ferrari truly needs to succeed. It's a conversation that will rage on until, and likely, after Lewis pulls on that red race suit. Moving from driver drama to format drama. According to Motorsport.com, F1 is considering a massive expansion of the sprint format. We're not talking 1 or 2 more. We're talking potentially 10 sprint races by the 2027 season. Let that number sink in. 10. This initiative is reportedly being pushed hard by F1's commercial rights holder and, crucially, by the race promoters themselves. Why? Because from a business perspective, it's a no-brainer. A sprint weekend gives fans more track action on a Friday with a competitive session, sprint qualifying, and a full race on Saturday. That's 3 days of meaningful on-track drama instead of just 2. For promoters, this means more ticket sales, higher hospitality revenue, and a better value proposition for fans who travel to the event. The article notes that promoters are embracing their value, and it's easy to see why. But, and this is a massive but, what about the sporting product and the fans watching at home? This is where the debate gets fiery. Let's look at the pros and cons. The pros, the promoter's view, more action. Simply put, more racing. Fans get a competitive session on Friday, a sprint on Saturday, and the Grand Prix on Sunday. Extended narrative. A sprint weekend creates a 3-act story. It can set up fascinating strategic dilemmas for the main race. A crash in the sprint can completely change the setup for Sunday. Standalone excitement. When it works, like in Brazil or Austria, it's a fantastic, punchy, 100 kilometers dash that is entertaining in its own right. The cons, the purist's view. Dilution of the Grand Prix. The biggest criticism is that a sprint can make the main event on Sunday feel anticlimactic. If the same driver wins the sprint and the Grand Prix from the front, Saturday can feel like a pointless preview. If there's a crash that penalties a driver for Sunday, it feels unfairly punitive. Parade risk. With less incentive to take risks, because points are on the line and the main race is the next day, sprints can sometimes be processional, especially at tracks where overtaking is difficult. Logistical nightmare for teams. It compresses their entire setup and strategy work into one practice hour. It's incredibly stressful and leaves little room for error or experimentation. Fan fatigue. There is a real risk of oversaturation. If half the calendar becomes a sprint weekend, does the format lose its special event feel? Does it become a chore instead of a treat? The current format is still a compromise. It's better than the previous iterations, but it's not perfect. The discussion now is about finding the right balance. Is 10 too many? Probably for most fans. But could a number like 6 or 8, carefully selected for tracks that produce great racing, like Interlagos, Red Bull Ring, Colorado TA, work? Possibly. This push for 10 sprints tells us one thing for certain. Formula One under Liberty Media is first and foremost an entertainment product. The sporting legacy is vital, but the commercial imperative is driving these decisions. The challenge for the FIA and the teams is to ensure that the soul of F1, the Grand Prix, isn't sacrificed at the altar of entertainment. This is one of the biggest philosophical debates in the sport right now, and it's only going to get louder. In a quieter but much more heartwarming story, Lewis Hamilton has been speaking about a former teammate. No, not that one. We're talking about the calm, smooth-operating Finn Valtteri Bottas. As Valtteri's future at Sauber, soon to be Audi, looks uncertain, and rumors link him to a surprising move to the new Cadillac divided by Andretti project, Hamilton gave him a glowing endorsement. Hamilton was asked about the possibility of Bottas joining the prospective Andretti Cadillac team, and he said, "I think Valtteri is a fantastic driver, and I think he would be a great option for any team. I loved being teammates with Valtteri. I miss being teammates with Valtteri for sure. I think he was a fantastic teammate." This is more than just polite praise. This is a significant statement. The Hamilton-Bottas era at Mercedes is often misunderstood. After the intense, often toxic rivalry with Nico Rosberg, Bottas was the perfect antidote. He was fast enough on his day to push Lewis, to secure front-row locks, and to win races, but he didn't engage in the political mind games. He was a team player first and foremost. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, not bitter enmity. For Lewis to say he misses working with him speaks volumes about the environment Bottas helped create. It was a harmonious, focused, and successful partnership that delivered 5 consecutive Constructors' Championships. Lewis didn't have to look over his shoulder in fear, but he also couldn't afford to relax. It was the ideal balance for a team. Now, let's talk about this potential move. The Andretti Cadillac project is still fighting for its place on the grid, facing fierce resistance from existing teams. But if they do get the green light, they need an experienced, steady hand to lead their development. They need a driver who has worked at the very pinnacle of the sport, with a top-tier team, who understands what it takes to build a winning car. Valtteri Bottas fits that description perfectly. He's not just a quick driver, he's a known quantity, a professional, and a great personality for marketing. For a new American team trying to make a splash, having a recognizable and likable star like Bottas would be a huge coup. And for Valtteri, it would be a fresh start and a massive project to lead, far away from the midfield anonymity he's currently experiencing. Hamilton's endorsement adds a layer of credibility to this potential move. It's a public recommendation from the sport's biggest star. It reminds everyone that Bottas isn't just a midfielder. He's a former Mercedes winner who still has the talent and, just as importantly, the temperament for a big team role. This story is a nice reminder that amidst the fierce competition, genuine respect and friendship can still flourish in the F1 paddock. Sticking with driver praise, but from a very different source. Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford, has been speaking about their upcoming 2026 power unit partnership with Red Bull. And he revealed something fascinating. His respect for Max Verstappen has grown immensely during their technical discussions. This is a crucial insight into what makes Verstappen so special. We see the driving, the aggressive overtakes, the relentless speed, the sheer domination. But what we don't see is what happens behind the scenes. According to Farley, Verstappen isn't just a driver who shows up, gets in the car, and drives fast. He is deeply, deeply technical. Farley said, "My respect for Max has grown. He is unbelievably technical. I've been in this business a long time. I've never seen an athlete that is so technical. He's a true engineer." Think about that for a second. The CEO of a global automotive giant, a company that has worked with countless drivers across all forms of motorsport, saying he's never seen an athlete so technical. This explains so much. It explains why Verstappen is so good at car development. He can feel a tiny change in the car and articulate exactly what it is doing and what needs to be done to fix it. He doesn't just say, "The car is understeery." He can provide specific, actionable feedback that allows engineers to map a solution. This is a rare and invaluable skill. It's what made Michael Schumacher so legendary at Ferrari, and it's a key pillar of Verstappen's dominance. This technical partnership for 2026 is fascinating. Red Bull Powertrains is a brand new operation building an engine from scratch. They have the genius of Adrian Newey's concepts, but the internal combustion engine is a different beast. Ford is coming in primarily to handle the electrical side of the hybrid PU, the battery, the MGUK, the control systems. This is where the 2026 regulations are changing dramatically, with a much greater emphasis on electrical power. To have your lead driver not only understand, but actively contribute to these highly complex technical discussions is a massive advantage. Verstappen can bridge the gap between the driving seat and the engineering whiteboard. He can tell the Ford and Red Bull engineers exactly what he needs, from the power delivery, the energy recovery, the deployment. He can test it in the sim and provide perfect feedback. This comment from Farley should send a chill down the spine of every other team on the grid. The 2026 regulations are meant to be a reset, a chance to catch up to Red Bull. But if Red Bull has Adrian Newey's final chassis concepts and a driver who is a true engineer helping to develop a new power unit with an automotive giant like Ford, their advantage might not just be maintained, it could be solidified for another generation. Verstappen's talent isn't just in his right foot. Finally, let's dive into a meta debate, the very structure of an F1 weekend. Another piece from Motorsport.com asks the simple question, should F1 change its race weekend format? Their writers debated it, and so will we. The current standard format is sacred to many. FP1, FP2 on Friday, FP3, qualifying on Saturday, race on Sunday. It's been this way for decades. But is it still the best? The arguments for change are gaining momentum. The case for change. Relevance of practice. For the average fan, practice sessions are often boring. They are crucial for teams. But for viewers, it's 90 minutes of cars lapping with no stakes. Replacing one practice session with a more competitive format, like a pre-qualifying shootout or a reverse grid qualifier, could inject excitement from the get-go. The Super Weekend. The idea is to make every day of the weekend must-see television. Why should Friday be a write-off for fans at the track and at home? Adding a competitive element on Friday increases engagement and value. Shaking up the order. The top teams always have the resources to dial their car in perfectly. Over 3 practice sessions. Reducing practice time could lead to more variability, more teams getting it wrong or right, and potentially a more mixed-up grid. It rewards adaptability. The case for tradition. The Grand Prix is the star. The main event should be the focus. Adding too many mini-events can detract from the prestige and importance of the Grand Prix itself. It shouldn't feel like just another race in a weekend of races. The sporting purist view. F1 is the pinnacle of motorsport. It should be a pure contest of the best car and best driver, perfected over a weekend of practice and setup. Adding gimmicks like reverse grids feels artificial and against the spirit of the sport. Team stress. As we mentioned with the sprints, less practice time puts an enormous strain on the teams. It's a huge workload for the mechanics and engineers and increases the risk of cars going out unprepared, which is a safety and cost issue. So, what are the proposals? Ideas floated include 2-day weekends, scrap Friday entirely to reduce costs and logistical burden, qualifying race, replace standard qualifying with a short race on Saturday that sets the grid for Sunday. This could encourage more aggressive racing. Reverse grid sprints, the most controversial idea. A reverse grid sprint based on championship order to create guaranteed drama and overtaking. Extended qualifying, a longer, more complex qualifying format with more sessions and eliminations. There is no perfect answer. The sprint was F1's first major attempt to address this, and it's clearly still a work in progress. The solution might be flexibility. Perhaps street circuits with high crash risks keep the 3 practice sessions. Maybe purpose-built racing circuits with great overtaking opportunities. Experiment with a qualifying race. A one-size-fits-all approach might not be the answer. The debate itself is healthy. It shows the sport is thinking about its fans and its future. The key is to evolve, without losing the core DNA that makes a Grand Prix Sunday one of the most dramatic and watched sporting events in the world. First, let's address the elephant in the room. By any metric, 2024 has been a disaster for Daniel Ricciardo. The season started with so much hope. After a middling 2023 return with AlphaTauri, now Visa Cash App RB, the expectation was that a full preseason would allow him to return to his old, brilliant self. The opposite happened. He's been consistently outqualified and outraced by his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda. The low point was arguably Monaco, where he qualified a dismal 18th, while Yuki made it into Q3. The chatter was immediate and loud. He's lost it. Time to retire. Liam Lawson must be preparing for a mid-season swap. His seat wasn't just hot, it was melting. The narrative wasn't if he would be replaced, but when. This is where Jonathan Wheatley enters the story. For those who may not know, Wheatley isn't just a key figure at Red Bull. He's one of the most respected and influential sporting directors in the entire paddock. When he talks, people listen. And what he said to Motorsport.com was absolutely fascinating. He was discussing Ricciardo's new ambassador role with Ford, a crucial partner for Red Bull powertrains from 2026 onwards. But he framed it in a very specific way. He said, and I quote, "It's great for Daniel to be working with Ford, and I'm sure that will give him an opportunity to get himself back into the paddock, and we'll see what happens after that." Now, on the surface, that might sound innocuous, but in the nuanced language of F1, this is massive. Get himself back into the paddock? He's already in the paddock. He's a driver. This implies a temporary absence, a period where he might not be driving, but would be present in this new ambassador role, staying sharp, staying in the family, and staying visible. So let's talk about this ambassador role. Why is it so important? From 2026, F1 enters a new era with revolutionary new engine regulations. Red Bull, after splitting from Honda, is building its own engines under the banner Red Bull Powertrains. But they're not doing it alone. They have a massive, multi-year technical partnership with Ford. This isn't just a badge on the car deal, it's a deep engineering collaboration. For Red Bull, keeping Ford happy is absolutely paramount to their future success. Now, enter Daniel Ricciardo. He's one of the most marketable, charismatic, and popular drivers on the grid. Who better to be the global face of this new Ford-Red Bull partnership? He's a walking, talking PR machine. This role allows him to add immense value to the Red Bull ecosystem without being in the race seat. It keeps him within the family. It puts him in front of Ford executives constantly, and it protects him from being poached by another team. It's a genius move. He's not just a driver waiting for a seat, he's now a key corporate asset. This is all happening against the backdrop of Sergio Perez's uncertain future. Checo's contract is up at the end of this year. While he started 2024 strongly, the pressure is always there. The number one question at Red Bull is, who partners Max Verstappen in 2025? Is it Perez again? Is it the promising but inexperienced Liam Lawson? Is it the suddenly rapid Alex Albon? Or is there a wild card? Host: Wheatley's comments strongly suggest that Ricciardo is that wild card. The timeline makes sense. Let's speculate. Ricciardo sees out 2024 at VCARB, hopefully finding some better form. At the same time, he begins his Ford ambassador work. At the end of the year, Red Bull decides not to renew Perez. For 2025, they need a safe pair of hands. They don't want to throw a rookie like Lawson into the lion's den alongside Verstappen. So, they promote Ricciardo. He knows the team. He's a known quantity. He's massively popular. And now, crucially, he's the perfect guy to lead the PR charge into the Ford partnership in 2026. It's a 2-year deal. 2025 to get back up to speed. 2026 to fight in the new era. Of course, this has ripple effects. This scenario would leave a seat open at VCARB for 2025. The obvious candidate is Liam Lawson, the reserve driver who impressed so much in his stand-in appearances last year. He deserves a seat. And what about Yuki Tsunoda? If he continues to destroy Ricciardo, he'll rightly feel he deserves a shot at the top team. But Red Bull has historically been hesitant with Yuki. This potential Ricciardo masterplan might indicate that they still see him as the leading candidate for that second Red Bull seat, performance be damned, because of his marketability and experience. To bring it all together, Jonathan Wheatley's comments are far from a throwaway line. They are a strong hint at a carefully orchestrated plan. Ricciardo's 2024 struggles might have been a blessing in disguise, forcing Red Bull to get creative. By pivoting him into a crucial brand ambassador role, they keep him warm, they add value, and they position him perfectly for a sensational return to the senior team in 2025. It protects them from having to make a rash decision on Perez or throw a rookie to the wolves. Host: The Honey Badger might have been down, but he's not out. This could be the start of the greatest comeback story in modern F1 history. What do you think? Is this a smart plan by Red Bull, or are they blinded by nostalgia? Let me know in the comments below. He's fast, he's fiery, and in 2024, he's been flawless. Yuki Tsunoda is in the form of his life, dismantling a seasoned race winner and establishing himself as the clear team leader. For any other driver on the grid, this kind of performance would have them linked to a top team. But for Yuki, it feels different. Despite the brilliance, there's a sense that the bosses at Red Bull are still watching, still waiting, still holding back. And now, a top executive has explained exactly why. The reason? They need more clean samples. This is the story of Yuki Tsunoda's relentless pursuit of approval and the incredibly high bar he has to clear. In our previous video, we talked about Daniel Ricciardo's potential path back to Red Bull. But that story has another crucial side. The man who is making that path necessary by being so spectacularly good, Yuki Tsunoda. According to a separate report from Motorsport.com, also from Jonathan Wheatley, Red Bull feels it needs more clean samples to properly judge Yuki for a potential 2026 drive. This is one of the most revealing phrases I've heard about a driver's development in a long time. Today, we're going to unpack what a clean sample actually means, why Yuki is still fighting this perception, and what he ultimately needs to do to finally get that promotion. First, let's establish the facts. Yuki Tsunoda has been phenomenal this year. He has consistently outqualified and outraced his teammate, Daniel Ricciardo. He's been extracting everything from that V-carb car, often dragging it into Q3 and scoring precious points. He's cut out the silly mistakes that plagued his first few seasons. He's shown racecraft, maturity, and blistering one-lap pace. By any objective measure, he has earned the right to be in the conversation for the Red Bull seat. He's doing everything that was asked of him, so why the hesitation? This brings us to Wheatley's key phrase, more clean samples. In scientific terms, a clean sample is one without contamination, pure and unambiguous data. Translated into F1 driver evaluation, a clean sample is a race weekend that is entirely representative of a driver's pure talent and speed, completely untainted by external factors or driver error. A weekend where you crash in FP1, compromising your entire setup. A qualifying session where you make a mistake on your final lap. A race where you get a penalty for a clumsy overtake or a track limits violation. A weekend where you're emotionally volatile on the radio, yelling at your engineer. For years, Yuki's problem was that his samples were often contaminated. The raw speed was always there, but it was packaged with mistakes, frustration, and inconsistency. The data was noisy. Red Bull's hierarchy, particularly Dr. Helmut Marko, couldn't look at a weekend and say, definitively, this is his true level, because it was always mixed with an unforced error. Trust at the top level of F1 isn't just given, it's earned over time. And for every clean weekend Yuki has now, he's fighting against the memory of several dirty ones from 2021, 2022, and even 2023. When a team like Red Bull is considering you for a seat next to Max Verstappen, they need absolute certainty. They need to know that you will bring the car home in the points, that you won't crash out of a podium position, that you will execute the strategy flawlessly. Think about the drivers Red Bull has favored: Vettel, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Perez, at his best. They are divided by, we're known for being ultra-consistent, for being metronomic. That's the benchmark. Yuki's challenge is that his past has created a perception of being a hothead, unbelievably quick, but emotionally fragile and prone to explosions. This season, he's worked incredibly hard to change that. The radio messages are calmer, the driving is cleaner. But for the decision makers, one season of good samples might not be enough to overwrite 3 seasons of noisy data. They need to see it again, and again, and again, to be sure it's a permanent change, not just a purple patch. The clock is ticking. The decision isn't for next week, it's for 2026. The new regulations represent a monumental reset. It's the most important car Red Bull will have built since the 2022 ground effect era began. They cannot afford to get the driver lineup wrong. This is why the evaluation is so intense and the standards are so impossibly high. They have options. They could stick with Sergio Perez if he maintains his form. They could bring back Daniel Ricciardo for his experience and marketability, as we discussed. They could look outside the family at a Carlos Sainz, or they could promote from within with Tsunoda or Lawson. Yuki isn't just fighting Ricciardo, he's fighting every possible alternative. To win that fight, his data needs to be so clean, so consistently brilliant, that it becomes an undeniable fact. He needs to remove all doubt. So, what does Yuki Tsunoda need to do to finally get that promotion? It's simple, yet incredibly difficult. 1. Sustain this form. He cannot have a drop-off in the second half of the season. He needs to finish 2024 stronger than he started it. 2. Eliminate all errors. No more track limits penalties. No more qualifying mistakes. Every weekend must be a clean sample. 3. Deliver a spectacular result. A podium for VCARB is a tall order, but a P4 or P5 finish in a crazy race, purely on merit, would be a massive statement. Something that makes headlines for his driving, not his radio. 4. Continue the maturity. The team radio is a window into the cockpit. Calm, collected, professional communication shows a driver in control. That is what top teams want to see. Yuki Tsunoda is in the form of his life, but he's discovered that past perceptions are hard to kill. Red Bull's request for more clean samples is a sign of both caution and hope. Caution because of his history. Hope because he's finally showing them what he can do. His career trajectory now depends on his ability to be not just fast, but impeccably, boringly consistent. It's the ultimate test of a driver's mental fortitude. 8 races down, 14 to go. The 2024 Formula One season has reached its first major checkpoint. And as it stands, Max Verstappen and Red Bull are, once again, in a league of their own. The championship lead is looking ominously comfortable. But is it already over? To answer that, we need to look back. We need to travel through time to some of the most legendary, nail-biting title fights in the sport's history and ask one simple question. What did the championship look like with a third of the season gone? The answers tell a story of comebacks, collapses, and glory snatched from the jaws of defeat. Welcome back, folks. An article on Motorsport.com recently compared the state of play in current and past championships at the 1/3 mark, and it's a fascinating exercise. Today, we're not just going to look at the numbers. We're going to dive into the context, the momentum, and the story behind each of these legendary seasons. We're going to see why, in Formula One, it's never over until it's over. First, let's establish our baseline. After 8 races in 2024, this is the picture. 1. Max Verstappen, 169 points. Charles Leclerc, 138 points. Gap to first, -31 points. On the surface, a 31-point lead is significant. That's more than a race win's worth of points. Verstappen has won 5 of these 8 races. The momentum is firmly with him. It would take a monumental collapse from Red Bull and an incredible surge from Ferrari for this to become a fight. But has a lead like this ever been overturned? Let's find out. We have to start with the most recent epic, 2021. After 8 races, the battle was ferociously close. 1. This is perfect. Max Verstappen, 131 points. Lewis Hamilton, 119 points. Gap to first, -12 points. Verstappen was ahead, but by a slim margin. The two had already collided at Silverstone. The momentum was swinging wildly from race to race. This was a knife fight from the first lap in Bahrain to the last lap in Abu Dhabi. The takeaway? At the 1/3 mark, it was absolutely anyone's game. A 12-point gap is nothing. 2024's 31-point gap feels like a chasm in comparison. Now, let's go to a truly wild season, 2010. This was a year of 5 potential champions. The Red Bull was the fastest car, but it was notoriously fragile. After 8 races, the standings were chaos. 1. Mark Webber, 93 points. Lewis Hamilton, 84 points. Sebastian Vettel, 78 points. Jenson Button, 70 points. Fernando Alonso, 67 points. Gap from 1st to 5th, 26 points. Just let that sink in. The entire top 5 were covered by less than Verstappen's current lead over P2. Webber led, but his own teammate, Vettel, was a threat. The McLarens were there, and Fernando Alonso, despite a miserable start with Ferrari, was hanging on. This championship was wide open. No one had a decisive advantage. It was all about consistency. This is the polar opposite of 2024's two-horse race. If you want a lesson in why you should never give up, look no further than 2012. Fernando Alonso put on a masterclass in dragging a car beyond its capabilities, but after 8 races, he wasn't even the story. 1. Lewis Hamilton, 88 points. Fernando Alonso, 86 points. Sebastian Vettel, 85 points. Gap to first, -2 points. An incredible 3-way tie, effectively. Hamilton led by a whisper. The narrative was about McLaren's pace and Vettel's defense of his title. Alonso was in the mix, but his famous win in Valencia was still to come. At this stage, no one could have predicted that Alonso would go on a stunning run of consistency to build a massive lead, only to have it cruelly snatched away by Vettel's late-season surge. The point is, the picture was incredibly blurred. The eventual winner, Vettel, was in P3. The 2024 standings are a crystal-clear portrait compared to this abstract painting. 2008 was a classic McLaren versus Ferrari duel. After 8 races, it was tight, but one driver had a clear upper hand. 1. Kimi Räikkönen, 57 points. Lewis Hamilton, 48 points. Felipe Massa, 48 points. Gap 2. First, -9 points. The defending champion, Räikkönen, was leading, but his teammate, Felipe Massa, and Lewis Hamilton were hot on his heels. The fascinating part of this season is that the lead changed hands multiple times. Räikkönen's challenge faded, and it became a straight fight between Massa and Hamilton, culminating in that insane last corner of the last race finish in Brazil. The guy who was leading after 8 races didn't even end up in the top 2 of the championship. It shows how long a season is and how quickly fortunes can change. So, what do all these comparisons tell us about 2024? 1. The gap is historically large. A 31-point lead at this stage is not normal in a competitive season. In the epic years we mentioned, the gaps were 12, 0 across 5 drivers, 2, and 9 points. Verstappen's advantage is in a different league. 2. Lack of a clear challenger. In 2021, Hamilton was the clear rival. In 2010, there were 4. In 2024, Leclerc is P2, but Ferrari's consistency is still a question mark. There is no single driver consistently taking the fight to Verstappen week in, week out. 3. The car advantage is key. The Red Bull RB20 isn't just a little bit better, it's a masterpiece. Until another team can produce a car that can challenge it on every type of track, the championship will remain Verstappen's to lose. Based on history, a comeback is always possible. A string of DNFs for Verstappen and a run of wins for Leclerc or Norris could change things rapidly. But history also tells us that a lead this large, with a car this dominant, at this stage of the season, has almost always resulted in a championship for the leader. The battle for 2024 isn't between first and second, it's between hope and historical precedent. Do you think anyone can stop Max? Or is the 2024 title already decided? Let me know your thoughts below. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into the often impenetrable world of F1 sporting regulations. An article on Motorsport.com features a detailed explanation from Williams' James Vowles on why Carlos Sainz's penalty in Miami was so severely delayed. It's a story that involves new evidence, a midnight hearing, and a team fighting for every single point. This isn't just a dry rules explanation. It's a masterclass in how F1 teams use every tool at their disposal to compete. Let's set the scene. Lap 39 of the Miami GP. Chaos at turn 1. Sergio Perez and both Haas cars collide. In the midst of this, Carlos Sainz, in his Ferrari, makes contact with Oscar Piastri's McLaren, damaging Piastri's front wing and essentially ruining his race. The race stewards immediately investigated the incident during the race. They looked at the available footage and took no further action. They deemed it a racing incident. The race finished. Sainz was classified in P4. Piastri was a disappointed P13. This is where the story gets interesting. Under Article 14 of the FIA International Sporting Code, a team has a right of review. This means if a team believes a decision was wrong, and they discover significant and relevant new evidence that was unavailable to the stewards at the time of the original decision, they can request a review. This isn't an appeal. An appeal challenges the steward's judgment. A right of review challenges the evidence they base that judgment on. It's a crucial difference. So, after the race, McLaren believed the stewards got it wrong because they didn't have the full picture. Their job was now to find that new evidence. As Vowles explained, during the race, the stewards have access to a limited set of camera angles, mainly the world feed and some main onboards. The ultra-high resolution, data-linked onboard cameras from each car? That footage takes time to be downloaded and processed. It often isn't available until after the prive race. McLaren's team went to work. They secured the onboard footage from Carlos Sainz's car. This was the significant and relevant new evidence. This footage likely showed Sainz's steering inputs, his throttle application, and his point of view in a much clearer way than the broadcast footage. It could prove that the incident was avoidable, and therefore a penalty should be applied. They formally submitted this new evidence and triggered the right of review process. So, hours after the race, the stewards had to reconvene. Team representatives from Ferrari and McLaren had to dial into a virtual hearing. James Vowles mentioned that for Williams, this process cost them a significant amount of time and resource, keeping engineers and strategists up past midnight. The stewards examined McLaren's new evidence. They agreed that this onboard footage was new, significant, and relevant. It changed the context of the incident. Therefore, they reopened the case. Now, with the full evidence available, they judged that Sainz was predominantly to blame for the collision. The penalty? 5 seconds. This was added to his race time, dropping him from P4 to P5 and promoting his teammate Esteban Ocon into the points. A huge swing for Alpine. Vowles' key point was about the strategic cost of this process. For a big team like McLaren or Ferrari, it's worth it. They have the personnel. But for a smaller team like Williams, it's a massive drain. Do you pull your exhausted engineers off their crucial development work to fight for a single point? It's a calculated risk. He wasn't criticizing the rule. He was highlighting its real-world impact. The right of review is a powerful tool for justice, but it's also a resource-hungry strategic weapon. The Sainz penalty saga shows that modern F1 is a 24/7 sport. The track action might end on Sunday, but the legal and strategic battles can rage on for hours, even days afterwards. It ensures that decisions are made with the best possible evidence, but it also adds a layer of complexity that most fans never see. It's a weird rule, but a necessary one to ensure fairness, even if that fairness sometimes arrives a few hours late. What do you think? Is the right of review a good thing for the sport, or should the steward's original decision be final? Debate away in the comments. He's 17 years old. He's never driven a Formula 1 car. He's only in his first season of Formula 2. And according to Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff, he's a very real candidate for the most coveted seat on the grid, the one next to George Russell. Wolff's comments about Kimi Antonelli at Monza were so direct, so confident, that they shocked one very important person, a former Mercedes world champion who knows a thing or two about pressure. Nico Rosberg could barely believe what he was hearing. This is the story of F1's next potential superstar, and the team boss who seems willing to bet everything on him. Welcome to our final deep dive today. The driver market silly season is in full swing, and the biggest domino is the second seat at Mercedes. With Carlos Sainz waiting in the wings and rumors about Sebastian Vettel's return, Toto Wolff has consistently pointed to one name, Kimi Antonelli. But at Monza, his comments reached a new level, and as Motorsport.com reported, Nico Rosberg was left stunned. We're going to look at what Wolff said, why it's such a risky strategy, and what Rosberg's surprise tells us about the immense pressure of driving for Mercedes. First, For those who may not know, let's introduce Kimi Antonelli. He is the crown jewel of the Mercedes Junior Driver Program. Tipped for greatness since his karting days, he's been fast-tracked through the junior categories with Mercedes' full support. He skipped Formula 3 entirely, moving from Formula Regional straight to F2. The hype is enormous. He's been compared to a young Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, but his F2 season has been solid, not spectacular. He has one win but sits P7 inches the championship. He's clearly talented, but he's also clearly still learning, which is what makes Wolff's comments so surprising. When asked about the driver market in Monza, Toto Wolff didn't hesitate. He said, and I quote, "Kimi has been in our junior category since he was 11. We have had great pleasure in watching him grow as a young man and growing through the ranks, and that is why I don't want to put any extra pressure on him by talking about him being a candidate for the seat, but I cannot say that that is not the case. He island. This is a huge admission." While paying lip service to not putting pressure on him, Wolff explicitly confirmed that the 7-year-old with zero F1 experience is a candidate for the seat. This isn't just paddock rumor. This is the team principal publicly putting him in the frame. It's a massive show of faith, but it's also a ton of pressure to put on a teenager's shoulders. Nico Rosberg, the 2016 world champion who won his title driving for Mercedes against Lewis Hamilton, was asked about these comments. His reaction was pure shock. He said he was surprised that Wolff was being so open about it. Why? Because Rosberg knows better than anyone what it's like to drive for Mercedes under that intense spotlight. Rosberg's surprise stems from experience. He knows that the pressure at a top team is immense. Every mistake is magnified. Every qualifying session is a high-pressure event. To throw a rookie, especially one so young, into that environment is a monumental risk. It could make him, or it could break him. Rosberg likely believes that such a move should be handled with extreme delicacy behind closed doors, not discussed openly in the media, which only adds fuel to the hype fire and increases the pressure tenfold. 1. The Verstappen Blueprint. Max Verstappen was thrown into F1 at 17 with Toro Rosso and was promoted to Red Bull at 18. It was a huge risk that paid off in historic fashion. Wolff might be hoping to replicate that. 2. Long-term projection. With the 2026 regulation change, Mercedes is building for the future. Antonelli could be their franchise driver for the next decade, a new Lewis Hamilton for the new era. 3. The anti-Sainz argument. Carlos Sainz is a known quantity, fast, experienced, and safe. But he's no 2, also 29, and would want a long-term deal. Antonelli represents a high-risk, high-reward bet on pure, unadulterated talent. 4. Keeping him loyal. By publicly backing him, Wolff is showing Antonelli that Mercedes is his home. It prevents other teams from swooping in and poaching him. For every Max Verstappen, there are a dozen highly touted juniors who were rushed and struggled. The pressure crushed them. Imagine the headlines if Antonelli has a few bad races. The next Hamilton narrative would turn toxic instantly. It could shatter his confidence and derail a promising career before it's even begun. Furthermore, if Mercedes have a poor car in 2025, having an inexperienced rookie alongside Russell could leave them with no clear development direction. It's a gargantuan risk. Toto Wolff has never been afraid of a bold move, but openly talking up a 17-year-old as a candidate for a works Mercedes seat is one of his boldest yet. Nico Rosberg's shock is a reflection of just how unprecedented this situation island. Wolff is either a visionary, seeing a future world champion where others see a rookie, or he's on the verge of making a colossal error in judgment. The 2025 driver market hinges on this decision. Where do you stand? Should Mercedes sign the experienced Carlos Sainz or throw Kimi Antonelli into the deep end? Let me know in the comments.